Hi everybody, my name is Chloe and today I'm going to be teaching you about one of the biggest challenges Mount Rainier National Park is facing, climate change. My intended audience for this presentation is for grades 6 through 9, taking place in a classroom setting. Now let's get started. To start, we need to know where Mount Rainier is located. Is there anybody in the audience who knows what state it's in? To answer your question, Mount Rainier National Park is located in southwest Washington. It stands at an impressive 14,410 feet high. Believe it or not, it's an active volcano, but we'll save that for another time. Here, you can see a picture of the gorgeous snow-covered mountain. Next, we'll move on to Rainier's challenge, climate change, which has also been called global warming. Let's start with the first question on this slide. What is climate change, and why is it happening? Climate change is when the normal weather for a place changes, like the change in how much rain a place gets or a change in a place's usual temperature during a season. It also is a change in the Earth's overall climate. Earth's climate is always changing, but recently how humans change the climate has become a big problem. We need heat, electricity, and cars to drive. And how do we make that kind of energy? We burn fossil fuels, oil, coal, or gas. When we do this, it puts harmful gases into the air and makes the air heat up, causing the climate of that place to change along with Earth's. Next, what does this all look like in Mount Rainier? One example is the picture you see here of a devastated forest in the park. This was caused by the Carbon River moving due to glaciers melting and giving off lots of water and sediment, which goes into the nearby bodies of water. It overwhelmed this river and flooded it, making the water go elsewhere, like to this forest, and the water won. Climate change also looks like the wildlife being threatened by their home changing too quickly for them to adapt to. As a result of glaciers melting faster than normal, parts of the park are being destroyed. A majority of the public visit the park by driving through it in their car, but if there aren't roads and bridges to drive on, and trails to hike on, and buildings for the park rangers to work in, then how can this national park continue to function properly? And how can it function without its native animals and vegetation harmed by this? Climate change is happening in Rainier, and who does it affect? The native wildlife, the people who run it, and us, the people who visit it. In the future, it might not be able to function properly anymore because of climate change. I'm sure you're wondering what I was talking about when I said the glaciers in Rainier are melting. What is glacial melting? Let me explain. Mount Rainier is home to over 28 glaciers, large thickened ice masses made from fallen snow, and global warming making temperatures rise is melting them 6 times faster than the historic rate. What does this melting lead to, and why is it important for the park? The glacier melting is important because when they melt, they produce water, and lots of it. Floods of water and enormous amounts of rock race down the mountain and overwhelm rivers, kill forests, and put everything around them at danger, including roads, wildlife, the areas visitors can tour, and the people visiting the park. This has even been called the most dramatic catastrophic effects of climate change in the USA by a professor of geosciences at Oregon State University. Here in this animation you can see how much Rainier's glaciers have changed in just the last 100 years, starting at 1896, then 1913, and to most recently in 2008. The water lost from the melting since 2003 is estimated at 200 billion gallons. The melting of the glaciers is unmistakable proof that climate change is real and it's causing catastrophic effects. How many of you here like animals, or maybe even love them? Yeah, who doesn't like animals? Animals are a big part of our world and we need them. They need Mount Rainier too. And here, who likes flowers and plants? Yeah, they're a big part of our life and important to the world too. We need plants and flowers to survive. They also need Mount Rainier. So how does climate change affect the wildlife of Mount Rainier? Well, the effects of climate change will soon reshape Rainier's ecosystems in the next 30 years, and in the next century it could drastically change the makeup of wildlife living there now. Researchers have found that Mount Rainier will warm up to 3 to 6 degrees by the end of the century, causing precipitation to likely increase and causing more of it to be rain. The heavier rains from climate change could also cause avalanches and outburst floods, both of which are very dangerous. What plants and animals are affected by all of this? Many of them, if not all, in some shape or form, are affected by climate change here. This doesn't sound important, but it is, and throughout the section I'll tell you why. A few special animals already at risk from the effects of climate change and Rainier are the pika, the Cascade red fox, and the Cascades frog. I think it'd be safe to say that many of you here like hamsters. The pika seen in this slide on the top left look a lot like the hamster, and they're warm and fuzzy like them too. They've changed throughout time to like living in high places, and so they're very sensitive to temperature changes. They live off the vegetation in the high meadows, and if that were to change, poof, they don't have as much to eat anymore. You can imagine what happens next. The next animal feeling the effects of climate change is the Cascade red fox. They're Rainier's own subspecies of red fox, and their existence is very weak. With the warmer temperatures, competitor animals will be brought in to the park, and the red fox's chances don't look too good. Lower down in the mountain, the warmer temperatures and changes in rainfall have a negative impact on the aquatic life in Rainier. It's predicted that by mid-century, the snow will melt almost a month earlier, leaving less water and leading to loss of habitat for some plants and animals, especially amphibians. This is because of the changes in water quality, freezing and thawing, nutrients, and there being more sediment in the water. The Cascades frog that you also see on the slide is a sad example of this. They're only found in 3 states and are incredibly sensitive to environmental changes, and so if we were to lose them, we'd lose a great indicator of the ecosystem's overall health. So what happens to these animals if all this continues? Not all of the delicate vegetation and animals of Rainier can move somewhere else better. This all leads to extinction, outbreaks of disease, the spread of non-native species, and death. With the potential loss of these threatened animals, we also lose their role in keeping other populations in balance and their role as a food source for other animals. We also need to think about the trees in the park, because these famous nearly 1,000-year-old forests of western red cedar, Douglas fir, and hemlock trees are also in danger. The higher temperatures invite more insect infestations, disease, and create stronger wildfire seasons. If the trees are wiped out, then so are the birds and squirrels who depend on them for food. Another concern is that the wildflower meadows have seen more and more fir trees growing at higher elevations in the park due to climate change, which affects the animals and vegetation living there, who rely on a stable environment to live and are squished for room due to this. Rainier's wildlife doesn't have enough time to adapt to how fast the climate is changing around them right now, and this is causing grave repercussions. So why do we need to care about how climate change is affecting Mount Rainier National Park? Because maybe you visited Rainier or want to in the future. We should care about what's happening because it does affect us, and it's happening because of what we're doing. Climate change is caused by us humans and our actions. We burn fossil fuels so we can have energy, and as a result, it's screwed up Earth's climate. Our actions have consequences and we have to deal with them. But how does this even affect us? Remember when we talked about the glaciers melting and how they produce a lot of water? This water takes sediment with it as it travels down the mountain, and then it goes into the rivers, but there's so much water that it can't fit, so it has to go to other places. It destroys trees, campgrounds, buildings, and trails, which affect how we visit the park. The West Side Road in Rainier is an example. It's been closed more often than not since 1980 because it's right in the path of debris coming off of the South Tahoma Glacier, and has the highest concentration of hiking trails in the park. And when they're closed off, people are forced to use different trails already being used, leading to overcrowding. Here's another way to look at it all. I want you to think of your most favorite place in the world. Think hard. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How does it smell? Think of the reasons why you love it. It's most likely changed in appearance over the years, like things do. Now keep that favorite place in mind. How does this affect the future of the park? Well, Mount Rainier National Park is a favorite place for many people, maybe even some of you who've been there. For many, it's native plants and animals. Locals, park rangers, scientists, you name it, they love it. The wildlife who need this place and the people who love it and work there would all be devastated if climate change continues to hurt it. Think of how sad you would be if your favorite place burned down or a flood happened, or other things happened that took away what makes it special to you. You'd be heartbroken, but the animals and plants in Rainier would be more than heartbroken. They would struggle more and more before eventually dying. Next, think about sharing your favorite place with others, maybe even your kids someday. It would break your heart to not be able to take your kids to the same place you loved, because it doesn't look the same, or because you can't go there anymore since it's closed, or it's simply not there anymore. There are so many reasons why we should care about what's happening to Mount Rainier, why we need to save it before it's too late. Remember how in the beginning I said Mount Rainier was a volcano? Let's go back to that. Mount Rainier is an active composite volcano, or a stratovolcano, and the highest one in Washington's Cascade Range, seen in this picture. A volcano is a cone-shaped mountain with a vent, where lava, rock fragments, and hot air or gas erupt from the Earth's crust. The stratovolcano is one of the most common types. Its many layers are made of erupted lava, ash, rock, volcanic mudflows, and other materials harden over time to form the volcano. Rainier is a volcano because it sits on a subduction zone, an area where a plate of the Earth's crust is forced underneath another plate. This involves the Juan de Fuca plate, I think it's called, going under the North American plate at the Cascadia subduction zone. Is that too much? Let me try again. Earth's outer shell is broken into many tectonic plates that travel over the rocky inner layer, the mantle. Volcanic activity, earthquakes, and Earth's inside heating up happen where they meet. Rainier is above the area where the top of the moving Juan de Fuca plate grows so hot that it sweats water. This hot water rises, causing melting within the overriding North American plate, creating magma. Magma is melted rock stored in Earth's crust, and lava is magma that reaches the Earth's surface through a volcanic vent. Rainier is sitting where continental and oceanic plates collide. Rainier's volcanic activity started between 0.5 and 1 million years ago around its birth, with its most recent eruption cycle ending around 1,000 years ago. Eruptions went between quiet ones producing lava and violent ones producing rocky debris that formed its craggy appearance with help from Rainier's glaciers. The more recent volcanic layers are mostly mud flows and other flows of a grayish volcanic rock called andesite. Mount Rainier is also said to be built on the base of 3 older volcanic rock formations with names I can't really pronounce. There are 2 craters on Rainier, each a quarter mile across, let off steam and show evidence of the volcano's young age. Around 40 million years ago, most of today's western Washington was under the sea, and a lot of volcanism started due to the process of subduction off of North America. I hope these pictures help it all make sense. In the first one, you see the layers of the Earth, starting with the crust, where we live, the mantle, the outer core, and lastly the inner core. In the next picture, you can see what happens when a tectonic plate subducts underneath another, creating volcanoes and other sites for disaster. When these 2 plates meet, the bigger plate, the continental plate, will make the other plate, the oceanic plate, go beneath it and into the mantle, melting it. This causes mountain ranges and volcanic activity because the pressure and heating make the plate and other rock turn into magma. This magma is liquid and lighter, so rises and finds places on Earth's surface through the vents to exit as lava. What decides the intensity of the eruption are the gas content of the magma and how runny it is. The andesite flows of Rainier are thinner, producing small flows that only make it a short ways down the sides of the volcano. Gases can easily escape from thin magma, but it can't from thick and sticky magma, and so pressure builds until they escape suddenly and explode. How is all this a danger? For a few reasons. Mount Rainier is the second most seismically active volcano in its region, with 20 earthquakes per year. It's the most dangerous volcano in the area. It's been called the most dangerous volcano in the country, with it possibly erupting soon and its major debris flows. And its current state so scary because if it erupted, its warpath would hit nearly 4 million people in the nearby Seattle-Tacoma area. Rainier is one of 16 volcanoes in the Decade Volcano Worldwide Program that uses science and emergency management to lessen the severity of natural disasters. It's chosen because it's geologically active, it last erupted 150 years ago, it's very possible to erupt again, its location poses a threat to nearby people, it's accessible for study, and lastly, its volcanic geology is visible. Scientists are worried about Rainier, and they predict its future eruption could be one of the worst natural disasters in the country. The lava, debris, pyroclastic flows of hot gas and ash could mix with water and mud to form devastating strong slurries called lahars. This was seen in the 1985 Colombian volcanic eruption, where the lahars raced towards the town at 30 miles an hour, killing 23,000 people. The lahars lifted houses, destroyed bridges, filled valleys almost 500 feet high. Something like this is due to happen if Rainier erupted. It's even worse when people see Rainier as non-threatening. Rainier is luckily one of the most heavily watched volcanoes on this planet, and it hasn't shaken since around 1894, let alone erupted for thousands of years, but the next eruption could happen randomly and be devastating. There are great efforts being done to prepare for and predict an eruption of Rainier, but work and education need to be done at home too. There's a lot going on at Rainier right now. The more we know about it, the better. Thanks for listening to my presentation, everybody.